quickly have my Goodreads up before I do this because I never remember everything I've read. There we go. Hey there, my name's Miranda and welcome to another video. And it's been a very long time since the last time I recorded. I'm pretty sure the last time I recorded was back in July at this point. Actually, it might have been before July, because July was when I was packing. It's been a very long time. It's been a very hectic let's see. It's been a long almost 8 months. Since that time, I have graduated from my master's. I now have my MA in Ancient History. I have now started a second master's. I am now in digital marketing. And I have moved cities. However, I am still in Wales. For how long? Well, I've yet to really see. But for now, I'm very excited that I'm back to filming. I have not filmed in a very, very long time. I haven't really felt like filming for quite a while, but I feel like I'm ready to get back into this. I still have a backlog of a couple videos from when I was filming almost 8 months ago, and I will get those done, edited, uploaded. I have a video from my time at Pembroke Castle with a friend back in May. I do have a video of a visit to Hay-on-Wye, however, I think I may have lost the footage, so that may no longer be coming. And I do have a couple little bookish videos, including one that I have slowly been getting some recordings for, because this one's going to take a little bit longer. But for now, my first new video in nearly a year. And today I'm going to talk about the books I read in January and February. I actually read quite a few books so far, however, now that the new Masters has started, it will be slowing down quite a bit. So I don't think I'm going to do monthly wrap-ups for a little while. I'll probably do bi-monthly wrap-ups, just so that I'm reviewing more than maybe 3 or 4 books. The months of January and February, I have read 12 books. One of them I technically finished March 1st, but I'm going to include it anyway. Alright, so let's get started. The first book I read of the year is First Grave on the Right by Dinarda Jones. Dinarda? Okay, it's spelled D-A-R-Y-N-D-A. Dinarda? I really hope that's right. First Grave on the Right is the first book in a paranormal urban fantasy series, and it's about a young woman by the name of Charlie Davidson. And now Charlie Davidson is not quite your average human. She is the Grim Reaper. She doesn't go around killing people, she leads them to the afterlife. So she's able to see dead people. And this has made it very handy for her because she decided to take a career as a private investigator, and she also works along the side of her town's police department. Mostly her dad, and then now her uncle, now that her father has retired. She's also, however, haunted in her dreams by this very, very handsome young man who she feels she might know, but she doesn't quite remember from where. I started the series at the recommendation of a friend of mine. She really enjoyed the book. She found them just really entertaining, and I really enjoyed the first book. I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. I didn't quite find it exceptional, but I enjoyed my time reading it a lot. I had a lot of laughs, I had a lot of fun. I kept wanting to just read it because it made me feel happy. And sometimes that's all you really need from a book. It just needs to make you feel happy. And one of the characters in the book, I so desperately needed to know who he was that I picked up the sequel not long afterwards. And that was Reyes. I'm pretty sure I'm finally pronouncing it correctly, or else my friend is going to be very upset with me. In this book, I also really enjoyed Charlie. She was just fun. She was constantly cracking some sort of one-liner. She was very, very sassy. She was just a laugh. So you know what? It might not have been the greatest thing I've read, but it was so much fun. And if you are looking for a really, really fun paranormal urban fantasy romance series, I highly recommend First Grave on the Right. It's a lot of fun, lots of laughs, and you will definitely want to continue so you can learn more about Charlie and Reyes. And it's actually really interesting what you do learn in the later books, which I will be talking about, because also in January and February I read the second book as well as the novella. The first I read was the novella, For I Have Sinned. And the novella is seen through the eyes of one of the ghosts that goes to see Charlie to eventually cross over, but before she can do so, she needs to know how she died. And it's just following as Charlie figures out how this young woman died. I enjoyed it. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. It was nice and a little fluffy, and you got to learn a little bit more about Charlie's powers, which was actually really interesting. It was fun to see the main character of this series without it being through the main character's eyes. Because everything in the books is through Charlie's eyes, so you get it through her perspective and everything she's been through. So to see it through someone who does not know her until she suddenly meets her after she's died, you suddenly realize just how odd Charlie probably is, which was actually kind of fun. I enjoyed it. So definitely read the novella if you do read the first book, and I would recommend reading it after the first book. Because I then read the second book, and if you read it before the second book, well, I guess you might be able to read it after the second book, but it makes a little bit more sense to read it before. And the second book is Second Grave on the Right. I think you can tell where these titles are going. Now, the second book I did like a bit more than the first book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. And that has a lot to do with what else you learn about Charlie as the Grim Reaper and about who Riaz is. I'm not going to say anything. I don't want to give it away, especially if this series does sound like something up your alley, because it's an interesting little twist about exactly who Charlie is as the Grim Reaper, as she calls herself. And there, I started the series. I am 2 books and a novella in. I'm hoping to read the third book very, very soon, and I will probably finish the series before the end of the year. I will keep you updated. Next for my January-February reads, I read Shadow of Night by Deborah Harkness, and this is the second book in the Discovery of Witches trilogy. Or what's the trilogy called? Oh, it's the All Souls trilogy. I keep forgetting that's its actual name. I started reading the All Souls trilogy last year with the Discovery of Witches. I started reading it after I saw the television series. And then afterwards, I didn't really want to wait for the second season to come on TV, so I decided to read the second book, and I quite liked it. I didn't love it as much as the first book. I liked the first book infinitely more. There were parts of the sequel that wasn't quite as interesting to me. There were parts of it I didn't quite care about as much, but it was a very well-written book. It had a lot of really, really interesting characters, and it's really, really good at blending fantasy and history. Like, ridiculously good. Deborah Harkness is a historian, so she has researched a lot of this, so she does know this very, very well. But even with that, it still impresses me just how well blended this is in the story. Seriously, I started looking up and see how much of this was actually historically accurate, and it was amazing how much of it was. It also did mean that I spent a lot of time Googling as I was going through it, because I'm not really an Elizabethan historian, so I didn't really know a lot of what was going on. That doesn't mean to say that if you don't know anything about Elizabethan history, you won't enjoy this book. This was more me going, oh, how accurate is this? Because the historian me would not rest until I knew. If you don't have any background in Elizabethan history, you'll be fine. It gives enough in there that you will know what's going on. You won't be confused. As Shadow of Night is a sequel, I cannot really say anything about what this book in particular is about. All I can say is it does pick up immediately after what happened in A Discovery of Witches, and it does follow a couple different storylines, both that happen in the present as well as in the past. And for those of you who have not heard of A Discovery of Witches, it is a historical fantasy series that takes place in Oxford. It follows a young witch by the name of Diana who has spent the majority of her life suppressing her powers and has instead decided that she is going to live her life as close to a normal human being as possible. She is in Oxford, currently doing research on alchemical texts for a new paper she is going to be presenting, as she is hoping that this paper will also lead her into getting a tenureship. While doing research for her paper at the Bodleian Libraries in Oxford, she accidentally calls forth an alchemical text that has been missing for couple centuries. This text is of interest to the other supernatural entities of her world, as many of them think it holds secrets to their races, their beginnings, their endings, and everything else in between. So now she is being hunted down by the members not only of her own species, but of others who want the text for themselves. During which time she meets a vampire by the name of Matthew, and they develop a very, very deep connection. That is all I'm really going to say. If this sounds interesting to you, I highly recommend picking it up immediately, and if you're not that interested in reading it, I highly recommend watching the TV series because it is amazing. Seriously, I binged that. I binged it. I finished it in, I think 3 days. Maybe 4. And in case I didn't already say it, I did give Shadow of Night 4 out of 5 stars. Didn't quite love it as much as the first book of the trilogy, but I still enjoyed it, and I am so excited to read the third book, which won't be for a while yet because the library waitlist is It's very long. But I will get there. I will read it before the end of the year. The next book I read was Queen of Nothing by Holly Black, and this is the final book in the Folk of the Air trilogy. Now, right, so I read Queen of Nothing. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I did enjoy it quite a bit, but as a finale book, it left me wanting quite a bit. I don't know how to put this exactly. The best thing I can say is that I was really enjoying the book up until I'd say just after the halfway point, and then all of a sudden, all I could think was, that's it? Just that, okay. And then it got to the ending and it got all wrapped up and this is one of those books that I really, really, really think it could have used more. And I would like to point out I am not the only person who thinks this. My friend who was also reading the series with me, she read it and all she could say after she finished it and she was waiting for me to finish it was, I would understand when I got there. And boy, did I understand. I feel like there was still a lot that could have been explained, a lot that could have been done, and even just a little bit more added to the ending to at least feel more cohesive of an ending. It didn't feel complete as a book. It felt like there was something missing, and that's a little disappointing for a series I was enjoying as much as I was. That being said, I did think it was a good book. It wasn't terrible. I just really wish there had been more to it. It felt like there was something missing. So for the overall Folk of the Air series, I enjoyed it. I had a great time with it. The final book was missing something from it. I'm not entirely sure what. I can't put my finger on it. It just felt like it was missing something. Even just like an extra 20 pages of, I don't know, someone being sneaky. Maybe that would have added more to it. I don't know. I really don't know. For anyone else who has finished this series and they read the final book and just went, it feels like there's something missing, leave a comment, leave some suggestions what you think could have been added to this because it really feels like something was missing from this book. And for those of you who have not yet read it, you will still enjoy it. I can guarantee you that. It is still a good book. Just, it might feel like there's something missing from it once you reach the ending. I almost hope Holly Black decides to do a spin-off series. Maybe that will add something to it. Or maybe a novella. She should do a novella. Maybe Holly Black. Write a novella. Write a novella from the Folk of the Air series, because I need it. A new novella, not just the one with Tarn writing that letter. An actual novella. Please, I will buy it. I will buy it if that will make you write it. Okay, the next book is... Right, so as I said, I felt like there was something missing from Queen of Nothing, so I went out searching for something that could fill the void of God knows what was missing, and it went weird. Yeah. I decided it would be a great time to start reading a few of my urban fantasy romances that I had backlogged on my interests list. And, right, so the first book I read of my very sudden romance book binge after Queen of Nothing was The Goblin King by Shona Husk. So this book had been on my TBR for a couple years now. Not gonna lie, it was mainly because of the fact that it said Goblin King and my first thought was, hey, Labyrinth! Listen, I understand I have a problem, it's fine. Now I'm gonna have to look up to remind myself exactly what this book is about because it left that little of an impression on me. I feel like I should just read this because... No, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do it. Right, so this book follows a Celtic warrior and I think it's a Celtic warrior. Yeah, we're gonna go with a Celtic warrior because it said he was cursed by a druid and... Oh. Okay, some sort of ancient Britain tribe that had the druids. There we go. Listen, I can't remember if it gave an actual tribe for him. I gave up reading it closely very quickly, as you can tell. So the Goblin King, Rowan, I'm pretty sure that's his name, he and his men were cursed by a druid a millennia ago for some sort of betrayal that happened. I can't remember, there was Romans involved, as what usually happens when there's druids and ancient Britannic tribes and curses. There's usually a Roman or two involved. I think that's standard. Anyway, him and his men end up being cursed to the Shadowlands, which is where the goblins reside. And the curse slowly devours them, forcing him to become more goblin than man. The only way for him to save himself is to save his soul and the only way to do that is to find a willing queen. However, until such time, he is cursed to be more goblin than man. He is cursed with a heart that is essentially a lump of gold, and cursed to only be able to venture into the human world through shadows, and only usually by granting a wish. Which does sound a little David Bowie Labyrinth Goblin King of him, but I don't know, maybe that's just not part of the mythos. So of course, Song and Dance, it's an urban fantasy romance. You know where this is gonna go. So I read it, I got through it, I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. It was alright. Nothing so spectacular. I won't read any of the other books in the series. Yes, it's a series. There's 3 more, I think. Yes. No. There's 2 more and a novella, right? So I didn't fully enjoy this book. A little disappointing because it happened on my TBR for a couple years. I was looking forward to it. I was thinking I'd at least enjoy it somewhat. It was okay. There wasn't anything great about it. Quite frankly, the thing that bothered me most about it was the storyline of the love interest. It was really stupid. Like, the storyline about the Goblin King and his men all being cursed, that was interesting. I wish there'd been a lot more about that. The human female love interest, her storyline was stupid. That was it. That's all I can say. It was really, really stupid. And when it finally did wrap up, it didn't make a lot of sense in some respects. So, Cursed Goblin King and his horde, great. The actual additional plot points that involve the romance and the woman who he finds and falls in love with him, it needed some work. But if this book sounds like something for you, read it. You might enjoy it a lot more than I did. Alright, so next we're on to another romance kind of book, but not quite romance. So the next book I read was Katara and Lord Death by, Martine Levet. We're gonna go with Levet. Now, Katara and Lord Death, I gave a 4 out of 5 stars, and I really, really enjoyed this book. Now, this book is very much a folktale. It's about a young girl by the name of Katara, and I'm really hoping I'm pronouncing that right. There's a very good chance I am not. Katara is a very good storyteller in her village. One day when she is out in the woods, she accidentally stays out too late and she finds that she is dying. As she is dying, she meets Lord Death. Now, Lord Death is there to take her away, and she begs him for an additional day to live, telling him a beautiful story about a woman who wants to find true love. Therefore, Death makes a deal with her. If she is able to find her true love in 1 day's time, he will allow her to live. Therefore, she sets off to find her true love. Now, I really, really enjoyed this book. It's very, very, it's very simple in its storytelling. You kind of know where it's going from the very first page. But even though you know, you get wrapped up in the story because of how it's told. It's beautiful. It's told like a traditional folk tale. And I really loved it. I enjoyed reading it. It put a massive smile on my face. It made me feel just happy. And I love those kind of books. I love those books where you read it, even though you know what's going to happen. You keep going because you just enjoy it. I also enjoyed just how many aspects of traditional folk tales was in here, particularly how death was personified within it. Also, she kind of 1001 Arabian Nights to him, which was great. So if you are looking for a book that has a lot of very traditional folktale elements, has personification of death, has a very simple but beautiful romance in it, I would highly recommend this book. I really, really liked it. I will definitely return to it again someday because of how much I enjoyed it. And I've already started recommending it to a lot of people in my life. Right, and then after Katara and my massive enjoyment of it, I then read what is so far going to be deemed my least favorite book of this year so far. Listen, I really only picked up this book because of the name of one of the main characters. I will fully admit to that, which was my mistake. Also might have been a mistake because it's I think it's book 12 or something in a series, it's book 14 in a series. I only picked it up because of the name of one of the main characters. His name is Puck. For any of my Midsummer Night fans out there, yeah, that's essentially why I picked it up. Listen, I performed that play. I saw Puck and I went, yeah, sure, let's see what he's doing now. Which was a terrible mistake on my part, and I should really know not to pick books based on a character's name at this point, but sometimes you just make those mistakes. Right, so I read The Darkest Warrior by Gina Showalter. And then, as I said, it's book 14 in her Lords of the Underworld series or something. I can guarantee you now I am never reading any of the other books in this series. This was more than enough for me. I gave it a 1 out of 5 stars. I did not really enjoy my time reading this. I was skipping a lot. I essentially was just reading the dialogue at one point because I didn't really care anymore. And I don't really know what all I can say in this because I've never read any of the other books in the series, so I'm not sure what, if anything, me saying something about it is going to ruin anything about it. Because, well, apparently, because I'm pretty sure Jillian is in some of the other books. Yeah, she is. I remember reading a review about how she's in, like, a lot of the other books. So the main character is Puck. He is the host of the Demon of Indifference, which I guess is a thing for all of the different books in the series. They're all different people who have some sort of demon that they're a host for. I don't know. I didn't really care for this book. I did not enjoy it. So yeah, I'm not gonna read any of the others. I have many other things I would much rather read, and yeah, no, I read the descriptor for a couple of the other books in the series, including the one that's after Darkest Warrior, and it actually made me laugh a little bit, so, and not in a good way. It sounded ridiculous. But if you are looking for a paranormal romance that has people who are the hosts of different demons, which actually does sound like a great series idea. I'm very upset I didn't enjoy this book, actually, because that sounds like a great idea. Then you might just enjoy this series. It really wasn't for me. There are multiple other romance books I prefer a lot more. Speaking of, the next one I read is oh gosh, right, so there's like a couple different lists for where books in this series kind of land. So I'm going to say it's the first book because it technically is kind of. Yeah, we're going to go with that. And that is Night Pleasures by Sherilyn Kenyon, the first official book of the Dark Hunter series. And for those of you who haven't heard of the Dark Hunter series, it's a series about a cast of characters who have sworn themselves to the service of Artemis, the Greek goddess. Now, as Dark Hunters, they are tasked with keeping humanity safe by hunting down demons, who are these beings that, in order to preserve their life, take the souls of humans. Now, being a Dark Hunter isn't all bad. They are immortal, they have powers, they are very wealthy. However, to become a Dark Hunter, you have died as a mortal, and upon your death, because you were betrayed, you cursed out vengeance, and Artemis heard your call. And in exchange for your vengeance, you give her your soul. And then each of these books follows a different Dark Hunter as they hopefully will get their soul back from meeting someone they love, because they will hopefully get their soul back for them and help them get their soul. Yeah. Standard paranormal romance sort of stuff. Now, Night Pleasures follows the Dark Hunter Kyrian, the Prince of Thrace. Now, Kyrian has been a Dark Hunter for many, many years, and he's pretty okay with it. It has its perks. One day, however, he wakes up after being knocked unconscious and finds he is handcuffed to Amanda Devereaux, a young professional woman who, even though her family is quite odd, she has no time for this supernatural nonsense. And meeting Kyrian has made her life just a little bit more interesting. I actually read Night Pleasures quite a few years ago. I read it after I read the other sort of first book of the Dark Hunter series, Fantasy Lover, which follows Julian of Macedon, but he's not a Dark Hunter. He was cursed into a roll of papyrus that then became a book. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it became a book because Keeping Up with the Times. I wonder if that would mean it had been an ebook by now. Anyway, so I had read it a couple years ago. I did enjoy it, but I kind of forgot about it because after I read it, I wasn't going to read all the other books. I was only going to read the ones that concerned Nick and Acheron. But I forgot. So I decided after reading Darkest Warrior, I wanted to read something that I knew I was probably going to somewhat like. So I picked up Night Pleasures, see if I would get back into the Dark Hunter series, and I did enjoy it still. I gave it a 4 to 5 stars, and I ended up reading the next book. However, that will be in my next wrap-up, as I did not finish that book in either January or February. But I'm now back into the series. I don't know how far I'll get before the year ends, but I'm hoping to read a couple more books in it. So if this sounds like an interesting series for you, if you like the idea of following a series of a bunch of rather jaded men who follow the goddess Artemis and they kill a bunch of things and they have no soul and they're looking for a woman who will love them enough to give them back their soul, or a man, because I'm pretty sure there's a couple female Dark Hunters, this might just be a series for you. I do enjoy it upon occasion, so I would recommend it. So after Night Pleasures, I then read The Iron King by Julie Katagawa. I really only read this because I saw a lot of advertisement for it through Fae Crate, and I thought, okay, I'll give it a try after Queen of Nothing just really left me needing a new fairy book. So I thought I'd give it a try and see what it was, and it was very 2000s. It was kind of a weird mixture of, it was a fairy book version of Shattered, that Alice in Wonderland edgy book I read that I really don't actually want to remember it, thank you. So The Iron King follows our protagonist, Megan Chase, and she is not leading the greatest life, but then one day she comes back and finds her brother has been replaced by a changeling. In order to get her brother back, she essentially forces her best friend, who she then finds out is actually a fairy, to take her to the land of the Fae so that she can get her brother back. Along the way, she also meets I think it's like a winter prince. Yeah, we're gonna call him a winter prince, the ice prince. Yeah, something like that. He's from the land of winter, that's all I really remember. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really enjoy this book. It was very early 2000s YA, which I'm not a big fan of anymore. I had my time with it when I was at the age it was aimed for, and now I'm not a big fan of it. I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. I didn't really enjoy it. I will definitely not be reading any of the other books in this series, but if you're looking for a book with fairies and I don't know, somewhat strong female protagonist, and something that definitely has some very early 2000s YA vibes to it, I'd recommend it. I know there's people out there who love it. It really wasn't for me. There was just a lot to it that I did not enjoy one bit. Ho ho, and now we're getting to one of my biggest disappointments so far this year. I'm still a little upset. So after I finished The Iron King, I really wanted to read something that I would hopefully enjoy, so I picked up Blood Air by Amelia Renzau. I don't know if it's Amelia or Amelie, I'm not entirely sure, so I'm really sorry if I got this wrong. Right, so before I get into this, I do know there was some controversy before this book was published. I'm not going to get into anything about it. I don't know enough about it to really say anything. I just know that I was personally quite excited for when this book was announced, and I'm very excited it did manage to be published because I did want to read it. I really wanted to immerse myself in this story. It sounded very interesting. So anything about the controversy for when it was pulled from publication for a little while, I'm not going to get into that. I don't know enough about it. Blood Air follows the on-the-run princess, Anya, of the Cyrillian Kingdom? Cyrillian. It's Cyrillian Empire. Now, Anna is on the run because she has been framed for the murder of her father, and she is trying to find the man who really killed him in order to clear her name. In order to find the man who actually murdered her father, she sort of enlists the help of one of the most notorious conmen in her entire empire, Ransom Quicktongue. I do have a full review on Goodreads about this, so I'm going to give a slightly smaller review of this here, but in general, I will say I did have some problems with this book. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I did generally enjoy it. I am excited for the sequel because I do want to see where this goes. I loved the world building. I loved the magic system. I love this whole idea of how anyone who is a part of this magic system, anyone who is, an affinite, I believe it is, anyone who has an affinity for a power, how they're treated as outcasts, they're feared, they're hated, they're thrown in prison, they're made into slaves, they're given these drugs that completely tamper with their abilities and make them useless. It's like, I really, really loved this world. It was so interesting, it was terrifying. And then I loved the way that this magic worked, how there were telltale signs of anyone who uses it, so you can't hide being a part of these people. I absolutely love that. I thought it was very interesting. It made a great world for the story to be set in. My issue, however, were the characters. I did not enjoy the character of Anna. There was so much of her that I feel did not make a lot of sense. A lot of her motives, anytime I read them, I was trying to think back as to how they made sense, how she got to this conclusion, how she suddenly decided this, and I couldn't think of anything that really connected very well. And then she kept trying to seem like she was trying to play a dangerous game and be a dangerous player, and I wasn't really buying it. It even says it in the description and whatnot, and I just wasn't buying it one bit. Then there was the character of May, who constantly flipped back and forth between being rather vicious and then so innocently hopeful that I felt like I got whiplash. And then Ransom. Oh, blessed Ransom. At one point, I'm pretty sure near the end of the book, I suddenly had this moment where I went, holy, he's Kaz Brekker. He's a discount Kaz Brekker from Six of Crows. That's all he is. And that wasn't a good thing. I love Six of Crows. I love the characters in those books. I think they're great. The thing is, if you make me think of it as a discount version of that character, you're not doing a good job with that character. I loved the idea of Ransom being nothing but a cunning con man. Ruthless, cutthroat, scheming, devious, anything like that. It was perfect for him. But then we slowly fell into that safe little net of all YA characters where even if they're ruthless and cunning, there has to be a sad little backstory that explains it. Or even, oh yes, I'm terrible, but I'm not this terrible, like I don't do this terrible thing. And I don't like it. I really don't like it. I am all there for morally gray characters. I'm all there for redeemable characters. I am not there for characters who you are presenting them to me as being ruthless and cunning and vicious and like everything could be terrible about them, but oh no. No, they're not that bad. I promise you they're not that bad. It's almost insulting. Like, you don't think I can enjoy a character that is a bad person. It is acceptable to have a character that is nothing but a bad person and then slowly make them redeemable. So when it got to the rest of Ransom's character and he just went from being this cunning, ruthless con man to this more attempting at a sympathetic character that, oh, it's only because of all of his circumstances and everything that happened that he's like this, but he's still not as bad as he could be. And I lost interest in him really quickly. He was no longer that great of a character. I really wish the author had not done that. I wish she had kept him as cunning, ruthless, sneaky, conniving, all that, and just slowly had him build a redemption arc over the course of however long this series is supposed to be. That would have been a great story. I would have loved reading it. He probably could have been one of my favorite characters of all time if it had been like that. But as it is, as soon as it got to that point, I found myself losing interest entirely, and my enjoyment of the book just dropped. It wasn't a terrible book by any means. Love the world, love the magic. It is beautiful. I really, really want to read the sequel, but the characters were the weakest point of this entire book, and I really hope they're improved in the sequel. As a debut book, though, it was still pretty good. So if this book does sound like something for you, if the storyline sounds like something you're interested in, even the characters, even though I don't make them sound very good, have something in there for you, I do recommend this book. It is still a very good book. The world building is amazing, and hopefully the second book does develop the characters a lot more. I'm kind of holding out on that. I'm holding out hope for that. And now we're on to the final book I read. This is the book that I technically did finish March 1st, but I was reading it in February, so I'm going to include it. And that was Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahurin. We're going to go with Mahurin. Now, I'm pretty sure most people kind of heard of Serpent and Dove. It has been making the rounds on BookTube, especially when it was first released. I heard so much about it that I decided I really wanted to give it a try, and I really liked this book. I enjoyed myself a lot while reading it. Serpent and Dove follows two main characters, one of whom is a witch, the other of whom is a witch hunter. Now, Lou is a witch who has run away from her coven, and she is in hiding from them because of events that are explained much later in the book. Reed, on the other hand, is a witch hunter, and he is very good at his job. In fact, he is a captain of his own squad. Now, because of a mess-up of circumstances and some misunderstandings, Lou and Reed end up being forced to marry, which Reed absolutely hates because he did not want to ever marry based on something else that happens in the book, as well as the fact that he wishes to dedicate himself to a life of being a witch hunter. What is it? A chouser, I believe is how you pronounce it. Lou, on the other hand, while she really doesn't want to get married, realizes this might be the perfect opportunity to afford her some more protection, so she doesn't fight it nearly as much. And you can probably see where this is going to eventually lead. Now, I really enjoyed Serpent and Dove. I had a lot of fun reading this book. It was very much like Witchfinder General, that section in European history where there was all those witch hunts and everyone was kind of in danger for like the smallest thing, like people could accuse them for being a witch, and everyone was trying to be sure that they were safe. And there's all this fear, and then there's the people that are going out and trying to find them and hunt them down. Just in this world, witches are actually real, so it's even more dangerous, and the witches are actually trying to kill people because they want to get power back, and it's really, really interesting. I enjoyed it so much. And then of course there was Lou and Reed, and I really liked them as characters. Lou was fun. She was funny, she was rebellious, she was kind of cranky a lot. Reed was very, he was Mr. No Fun for quite a bit of the book. And then as he got more and more used to the people around him and he was developing more of a relationship with Lou, he loosened up a lot, and it was just so much fun. And then as you got to the end of the book, the climax and everything that happened there, I was zooming through this book. I was enjoying it so much. The only stretch of time when I stopped reading it so much was because I had to be at lectures and I had some work I had to do, and I was at my shifts at work, and I had to focus on other things, so I took a little bit of a break for a bit because all I really wanted to do was sit and read it. I was enjoying it so much. So I would highly recommend this book if you're looking for a really, really fun enemies to lovers book, if you're looking for a great book with witches, if you're looking for just something that has this great connection to a time in history that is now put into a fantasy world that the magic actually exists and now the stakes are even higher, you will enjoy this book. I know there are some people who don't like it nearly as much. I'm not going to get into any of that. I've only heard bits and pieces here and there, but I did personally very much enjoy this book. I loved it quite a bit. I am so excited for the sequel. I can't wait. I gave this book a 4 to 5 stars. It wasn't perfect, but I enjoyed myself a lot while reading it. And I know that as soon as the sequel comes out, I'm going to hope that I am first in line from my online library list to take it out and read it, because I don't really want to have to wait. So there you have it. Those are the 12 books I've read since the beginning of 2020. I've read some books I very much liked, read a couple that not so much, but in general, I've so far had a great start to the year for my reading. I'm reading a couple books right now, some that I'm really, really enjoying, some that they could be better, but hopefully by the end of them, I'll like them a lot more. And then I have so many books I'm looking forward to reading for the rest of the year, and so many series I'm hoping to get further into. So there you have it. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos by me, both bookish and travel related, please be sure to click that subscribe button down below. And I'll see you next time. Bye!